that one of the most important things to consider when choosing a partner is to choose a very kind person. If you have any doubts, I assure you, after today's story, you will definitely reconsider. Hey everyone, welcome back to True Crimes and Stories. Let's get into today's story. In a peaceful village in Uganda, Madina lived a happy life. She was a loving wife and a mother of 2 children. Her laughter filled the simple home she shared with her husband, Samuel. The village elders talked about their love stories, which was full of romance, sacrifice, and dreams. Madina had always dreamt of a better life for her family. Their mother's income, barely enough to make ends meet, was a constant source of worry. When an opportunity to work overseas in Oman presented itself, Madina, despite her worry of leaving her children, saw a chance to break free from their financial struggles. Her husband, though hesitant at first, eventually agreed. With a heavy heart, Madina bid farewell to her children and her husband, promising to return soon. The bustling airports, a world away from her familiar village, was a confusing blur. She found herself in a strange land, working long hours for a meager salary, longing for the comfort of her family. The job, a far cry from the promises made, was a disappointment. The money, barely enough to send back home, felt like a joke, like a cruel job. After a year, Madina returned home, disheartened but determined. Her husband, though disappointed at the lack of financial progress, welcomed her back with open arms. She bought him a motorcycle, hoping it would generate more income. Fate, however, had a different plan. Another opportunity, this time in Saudi Arabia, presented itself. This time, things were different. Madina worked diligently, sending money back home, not only for the children, but also to support her husband's business ventures. She had a purpose, a hope for a better future, a sense of pride in her contributions. She decided it was time for a second baby, so she took some time off work. Their lives were slowly transforming. Madina, despite the sacrifice, was happy. She bought a motorcycle for herself, refurbished their home, and was even expecting their second child. Life, for the first time, seemed to be on the perfect path. Madina discovered that her husband had a child with another woman. Despite this, Madina, being a kind woman, forgave him and agreed to raise the baby because the other woman had abandoned the child. But the shadows of doubt had begun to creep into her heart. Her husband, who had been so supportive before, seemed increasingly demanding. He would constantly ask for more money, often with vague and unconvincing explanations. He would claim he needed it for investment, for business, for opportunities. Madina, trusting him blindly, would send him the money she worked so hard for. This time though, he wanted it all. He demanded she withdraw all her savings. Madina, confused and afraid, refused. Her husband, once a source of comfort, was now a stranger. His desperation, his insatiable greed was something his wife couldn't comprehend. Her intuition whispered danger, a danger she couldn't ignore. He had a sudden interest in poultry farming, demanding more money for feeds and equipment. Instead, she bought 2 plots of land, planning to renovate their home rather than buy a car, a symbol of luxury she no longer desired. The incident that shattered their life was a chillingly normal day. Her husband suggested a family outing. Her first response was no. But Madina, pregnant and weary, agreed. He took them to a local restaurant, paid the bills, and left them with a promise to return soon. Hours passed. Madina, unaware of the darkness that was about to engulf her, waited patiently. Her husband, instead of returning, sent a message. Come home. Madina refused and waited. When he finally arrived, a storm of fury raged his eyes. The man she loved, the father of her children, was unrecognizable. He drove them back home. The silence in the car thick with tension. The air charged with unspoken anger. At home, they found their house plunged into darkness, silence replacing the usual hum of the village. Madina, her heart beating with unease, noticed the door to the outhouse was ajar. The feeling of dread she had been suppressing took hold. She walked towards the outhouse, her steps heavy. A cold blade pierced the night. A machete held by her husband slashed at her. She screamed, her hand instinctively rising to shield herself. But the blade was relentless. Her fingers were gone. Madina, taking a closer look, realized her husband wasn't alone. Other men, faces obscured in the darkness, joined the attack. They were assassins, hired to end her life. Their motives was a mystery. The scene was chaotic, a blur of pain and fear. She fought back, screaming for help, but her cries were lost in the silence of the night. The only sound, besides her own gasp, was a sickening thud of the machete against her body. Finally, exhausted and bleeding profusely, Madina pleaded dead. Her only way out. Her attackers, believing their job was done, fled into the night, leaving her lying in a pool of her own blood. She lay in the outhouse. Her world shattered into a million pieces. Her fingers, wounded by the machete, was a grim testament to the brutality she had endured. Her neighbors, hearing her feeble cries, rushed to her aid. The shock of finding her alive after such a brutal attack was overwhelming. They carried her to the hospital, her body full of wounds, the pain a constant throbbing companion. Madina was in a critical condition, her life hanging in the balance. The doctors, shaking their heads in disbelief, whispered about a miracle they couldn't understand she had survived. Madina had a fierce will to live. She clung to life, fueled by the love for her children, the instincts to survive. She spent days in the hospital, enduring excruciating pain, her body a testament of the savagery she had endured. When Madina was in the hospital, a young man came to visit. He told her that her husband paid him to kill her, but they had a disagreement. The man decided to turn himself into the police so he could be arrested. He thought it was safer to be in police custody than to be targeted by the assassins. The police arrested him and they started to investigate the case. Her husband, caught and arrested, faced the law. He confessed, admitting his role in the murder plots. He claims he had wanted to end her life, the motive shrouded in a web of deceit and greed. The court sentenced him to 4 years imprisonment, which to my opinion is very small. A meager punishment for the trauma he had inflicted on Madina. Madina returned home. Her scars, both physical and emotional, were a constant reminder of the horror she had endured. Her hands, with its missing fingers, a daily reminder of the ordeal, was a constant source of frustration. Her struggle, however, was far from over. Raising her two children alone and financially strapped was a daunting task. Her motorcycle, a symbol of her hard work, had been taken away. The only solace was her 2 plots of land, one of which she sold to ensure her children's future. Madina, the kind and loving woman who had always dreamed of a better life for her family, had been robbed of her dreams and her innocence. She was now a warrior, a survivor, a spirit unbroken. Do you now agree with me that it is important to marry a kind person? Her love for her children gave her the strength to survive. Human spirit is capable of enduring and rising above even the toughest of circumstances. Madina is on TikTok, so I will make sure I leave her link in the description box. Well, we have come to the end of the story. Please share and subscribe, okay? Subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for more crime stories. Thank you so much, okay? And this is not a fairy tale, yes, it's a true story. So, be careful out there. Be careful with the type of people you surround yourself with. Surround yourself with kind people. Okay, bye-bye.